what's the one company that appears to be in a tough position that could face these debt cliffs, and also one company that is in good position? Hey everyone, Trade to Black podcast time. I am your host, Shad Dales, and thanks for checking in. A lot to dive in pertaining to the markets and a lot of global events that have happened in the recent couple of days. And so there's a lot to dive in that we want to get right into right away. So before we welcome in the two gents, all views in the Trade to Black podcast and the guests on this podcast are purely opinion. You should not treat any opinions expressed by us or guests as investment advice. And the views on this podcast are solely intended to be informational and are not investment advice. All right. Ben Smith, lead financial writer. Wow, what a story you did earlier this week about debt cliffs and cannabis companies. That got almost, I think, what are we, 12 hours in, and it had around 40,000 impressions on Twitter?
Yeah, something like that. It's going to turn out to be one of the best I've ever written. So I guess there's a lot of pent-up demand to figure out what the maturities are, especially with the market kind of, in the toilet and debt cliffs being the talk of the industry right now. So glad I parsed that out.
Yeah, great story, by the way. And if you want to learn more, we actually have the link to the story in the caption below. Have a read because there's some really eye-opening information regarding the top 9 MSOs. We'll get into that in a little bit. As well, millennial entrepreneur Anthony Verrill joins us. Anthony, good to see you, sir.
Good to see you too. It's a good week. I'm ready to dive into what we got loaded up here.
Yeah, no kidding. I think we got a lot to talk about. Let's begin macro news and this BRIC Alliance. Russia has adopted more or less a new foreign policy last week, identifying China and India as its main allies on the world stage. And what's really caught me by surprise, what it shouldn't, is that a lot of this news is not getting any coverage whatsoever in mainstream networks. So I'll begin with you, Anthony. If you're an American citizen, how concerned should you be long-term based off of this announcement?
I don't know how concerned you should really be, but I mean, Russia becoming allies with China and India, it's kind of like obvious. Like, who else are they going to align themselves with? They don't really have an option at this point. I mean, what's interesting to me is the talk about them all coming together and creating their own currency, per se, to trade in. Brazil is more of, I guess, an outlier to me than like Russia joining the whole BRICS thing.
So who is it?
Let's see how far
it's India, it's Russia, China, and Brazil.
Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa.
South Africa.
And then you have Iran and Saudi Arabia that want to join as well. Mohammed bin Salman yesterday was, I don't know what he's thinking, but he came out and had an article that basically said he's done pleasing the Americans. I bid him good luck. I mean, I don't think people realize how mercurial China can be as far as a partner goes. Granted, the U.S. ain't much better, but just look over the last 10 years on how Xi's devalued his currency, on the totalitarian policies that he's enacted around the startups and the companies and the tech industry in China. And then let me know if he's a sustainable trade partner moving forward.
Yeah.
Iran and Saudi Arabia, it's a newly formed alliance. Iran, if they had it their way, would invade Saudi Arabia and basically take them all out. Let's see how long all of this lasts. Like, I think it's good headlines. It's good banter. I think it's kind of moot that these countries are going away from the dollar. I mean, the top 10 U.S. trading partners, the only two that are in that top 10 are India and China, and they're still going to transact in USD. Kenya, go do whatever the fuck you want. Saudi Arabia, Iran, sure, that's not good for energy, but there's outs for us. I'm not too worried, really, what's going on. I think a lot of it is just headline risk.
Yeah. Ben, what's your take on it all?
Yeah, obviously there's a monumental shift. I think you could best sort of summarize it as being, very, things are starting very slowly and then suddenly. So this is one big peg to that. And, to add to what Anthony said, also Saudi Arabia cut through OPEC, cut 1.1 million barrels, I think. And that was not very good news for the U.S. economy. And that was sort of seen as a slap in the face to the Biden administration as the U.S. and Saudi Arabia sort of drift apart and, their alliances sort of break up. So there's obviously a lot of things under the hood right now that are very bearish for the U.S. dollar, and I would be concerned actually, but not necessarily something tomorrow or sell your U.S. dollars next month. But it's the trickle and the stampede out of the U.S. dollar. It's not a stampede yet, but there's a trickle out of it. And I think more countries are going to join, and eventually it's going to create some collateral damage for the U.S. dollar. So I mean, we can already see that happening.
It's almost like Narcos Mexico trying to remove Felix. And in this case,
I mean, but it doesn't. But okay, so if you're Saudi Arabia and if you're Iran and if you're these countries that are joining the BRICS, with the exception of Brazil, they're all geographically locked. That's one supercontinent over there, whatever you want to call it, with Africa, the Middle East, Asia, Europe. Like, it makes sense. Like, with the Belt and Road Initiative that China just celebrated a 10-year anniversary of, they've got 1,000 trains a day going into Europe.
Yeah.
Like, they're driving commerce there. Like, it's inevitable that geographical location is going to trade with the Chinese. If they're trading with the Chinese, they're not going to use American dollars to generate that commerce. Like, why would they? If by all means, like, I think these are just headlines. Like, they saw a banking crisis that was going on that's probably still going to have some reverberations through the U.S. economy. I mean, they don't like what's going on policy-wise in this country right now, especially as we're putting pressure in Ukraine. So, I mean, this whole concerted effort with the headline risk, it makes sense. But, I mean, I look at it as just trying to exacerbate what's already going on as far as stresses to the financial sector.
And you are right. And a lot of things do make sense geographically. But I think what you're seeing is the acceleration of what could be described as the inevitable. And a lot of countries are starting to really look at it. And I think in the overarching 40,000 foot view, I think a lot of the world now sees the U.S. as a declining power. We're moving from a unipolar global order where the U.S. was clearly on top in terms of dominance militarily, the world reserve currency. Now we're clearly, in my opinion, headed towards a unipolar sort of predicament instead of a single power. So I think the world's got to transition for that, and there's going to be ramifications over time for the U.S. economy. Inflation is probably not going to go down to 2% anymore. People, other countries are transacting in currencies other than the U.S. dollar. Supply chain issues are going to persist. So there's going to be ramifications. It's just not something you have to be concerned about next week or next month. You see some U.S. dollar weakness now, but over time, all these little paper cuts are going to add up, and people are going to notice.
Yeah, but you say military dominance. Name me a war that the U.S. has won post World War II.
Well, that's right, but that's true.
We haven't.
Yeah, no, you got a point, but I think they're perceived.
I'm all for this.
A lot of it's perception,
as a U.S. citizen,
right? And
it's complete perception. But I mean, I'm all for this. Like, I'm all for the world getting off the teat of the United States. Like, focus on what's going on here domestically versus abroad.
Boom.
We don't need these military installations that are abroad, that the only people making money are the military industrial complex.
Correct.
We can be a net exporter of energy if we had our shit together and we were actually building infrastructure and could get aligned in this country.
Spoken like a true libertarian. I agree 100% with that.
It's true. It's true though. Like, I don't think, like, we don't need to be Team America World Police. Like, it obviously doesn't work. It doesn't work. It's not working. Like, shit is really fucked up right now.
But the reason why they do it is because the reason why the U.S. is spread into an empire is because it's good for, like you said, the military-industrial complex, right?
Yeah, it's great.
All these politicians are funneling money through shell companies and slush funds and getting kickbacks to their corporations and all that. It's incredible. And I think that's what it's all about. Empires spread their democracy or whatever they want to do, but it's not for the betterment of people. They don't give a shit about people. They don't care about Ukrainians. They care about the military industrial, lining their own pockets, advancing their own interests, right?
And meanwhile, go ahead.
Also, I mean, name me an empire throughout time that's spread out globally that's actually sustained itself.
Right.
There isn't one.
Never happened.
There literally isn't one. They rise and fall. The only empire that still ebbs and flows are the Chinese. You know who didn't want global domination or didn't spread themselves too thin geographically? The Chinese.
Yeah.
They just want to fucking trade.
Yeah.
They just want to trade and make money and strengthen China. China's not going to go invade Europe. I mean, I don't think China's going to go down to Africa and start just funneling people down there and annexing places.
There was an interesting story on 60 Minutes a couple weeks ago just talking about the current state of the U.S. Navy and how they're over in Guam right now. And at the pace that China is developing their naval academy, basically, they are going to surpass the U.S. within the next 5 years. So when I look from like military warhead, we're looking at what is the news that's dominating the U.S. right now? You've got an indictment pertaining to a former president and a porn star. It's divide and conquer, and that is exactly what's happening. It's continued to unfold, and it's more evident than ever. But this is why I bring this up. Like, what are the long-term consequences? And it appears that, these aren't, tier 2 companies or countries across the world. This is China. This is Russia.
Yeah, but
go ahead.
Yeah, but the Chinese are building up their navy and building up their defenses because of us.
100%. 100%.
I mean, that's a counteraction and a countermeasure against us. Like, it's not like they're amassing this army to go take over the world. Like, they're doing it.
They want to take over Taiwan.
I don't know if they're as innocuous as you think.
But Taiwan was theirs.
Yeah.
Taiwan was theirs until the Western world came in and started pushing their influence in Taiwan.
Because the U.S. wanted to maintain their global dominance, and that
Ukraine was fucking owned by Russia.
Yeah.
Who's influencing Ukraine? Us.
I don't know if they're as innocuous as you think, though, because China needs energy. They got 1.6 billion people to feed. They need resources. Yeah. So, I don't know if they're like, you're right. Traditionally, they haven't gone all over the place.
They're doing it through trade.
But let me ask you something.
They're doing it through investment and through trade. We don't go and invest and build infrastructure. We go in and destabilize the government, take the fucking leader out, and then go in there with our military and try to just create havoc. And destabilize. We're very good at going in and destabilizing regions.
That is true.
On our own interest. China's done it through commerce and through investment, which is going to be proven. It's the way that this should be done.
Yeah. Does Russia adopt this foreign policy and I'm not a Trump supporter, and I don't want people thinking that, we're Trump supporter podcast, but if Russia adopts this foreign policy, would they do it if Donald Trump were president?
Maybe not. It's hard to say because Trump was.
I think that's the wrong question.
I
think it's the wrong question. I think the right question is would we be in Ukraine if Donald Trump was president? No, we wouldn't.
No,
we wouldn't be in Ukraine. I don't know if Putin would have actually enacted a ground war into Ukraine if Trump was still in office. That's not here nor there. We'll never know. But we definitely wouldn't be funneling billions and billions of dollars to Ukraine if Trump was in office. Which I don't think they'd be making these moves with the whole BRICS thing and against the dollar if we weren't funneling money into Ukraine.
So what is it?
And putting our nose where it doesn't belong.
Is it the Democratic Party? Because we know they're very much disengaged with the everyday American and have been for probably a good 30 or 40 years. Or is it just the old administration that is totally out of sync with the American people? Like, which is it, Ben?
Yeah, I think it's the administration that's doing a lot of causing a lot of the problems. It's almost like they're designed to make the country fail. And you can use whatever. I'm not going to get into the reasons. I have my own views, but it just everything that they've done from the moment that they got elected, Biden, for the Keystone Pipeline and shutting off the energy spigots, and all the other policies, banning gas stoves. It's starting wars in Ukraine. People have to remember, Donald Trump, there was no foreign wars in the 4 years of presidency under Donald Trump. And that's not to defend him. That's just a point of fact. And all of a sudden, Joe Biden gets in, Lloyd Austin becomes the defense secretary, and he's on the board of Raytheon and a couple others, Booz Allen or whatever it was. And all of a sudden, the missiles start flying in Syria. All of a sudden, we're going in Ukraine, funneling billions and hundreds of billions of dollars now, sending tanks. So, I mean, people can decide who is the war president, who isn't. And that, again, that's not to defend Trump. There's a lot of issues I have wrong with him, but there was no foreign wars kind of under his watch. So, policy has taken a shift. And, by us sort of, Ukraine losing the war right now, I think it's not looking good for the backers and defenders of them.
Again, interesting that this is getting no attention from the mainstream networks, but obviously there's an.
We're too busy weaponizing the legal system, which it's not. I could care less who they're going after, but it's just setting a bad precedent because now any president that leaves office that happens to have any misdealings, they're going to come after him from a legal perspective. It's not setting a good precedent.
And just think about that. No matter what you think of Trump, and it doesn't matter what you think. Like,
it's not a Trump thing.
It's a statute of limitations. It was like the feds already looked at this and did not deem it a crime, and now a state prosecutor comes after Trump past the statute of limitations to charge him for a felony. It's obviously prosecutorial selection, right? Where they're selectively prosecuting someone because they don't want him to run. It's all about Trump not running in 2024. And the powers that be will do anything that they can. This is what this trial is all about. It's about to get Trump, get a felony on his name so he doesn't run in 2024. And
his numbers,
when you have America, is that a good justice system? Because if it's not the way justice should be run. And obviously we got a big problem in my view.
Okay,
but I mean, you really want to look at the American justice system. That's a whole different conversation.
We'll be here all day.
Not exactly.
That's true.
Okay, let's pivot to crypto. There was news earlier this week where 3 Canadian crypto companies, WonderFi, CoinSquare, and CoinSmart, they've entered into a business combination agreement to combine their respective businesses. The press release states, quote, "It will create one of the largest crypto trading platforms in the world." Anthony, when we look at this a little closer, was this a deal that WonderFi had to make? Because on paper, it appears these shareholders really got screwed.
Yeah, I mean, I've been bearish on WonderFi's business model since it came out.
Yeah.
Didn't really understand what they did. More of like a custodian / bringing like DeFi to the masses. And I mean, I'm a true believer that if you're going to enact or transact in the DeFi ecosystem and participate, it should be self-sovereign and you should actually own your own crypto versus putting it in a custodian or a centralized platform. I mean, I think this deal, the amalgamation between the 3 gets them about 1.65 million users. That's nothing. So while they're calling it one of the largest crypto platforms in the world, sure.
Yeah.
It's a great headline. I think that from a Canadian crypto perspective, the Canadian government needs to focus on less stringent on-ramps into the crypto ecosystem. I don't know a single Canadian that's not highly frustrated with being able to get fiat into the system to transact. So, I mean, I think there's bigger problems in the crypto ecosystem in Canada than these 3 companies coming together and creating this conglomerate that probably won't really be able to compete anyway with the likes of Binance and Coinbase, et cetera.
Can you scale that back? Because we've had Richard, why am I drawing a blank, from the CSC?
Carlton?
Richard Carlton. He's talked about this a little bit, about the strength that, the crypto space in Canada has in comparison to the U.S. Can you maybe educate some of our viewers?
Strength,
like just as far as like it's a lot tougher.
Oh,
yeah.
So banks. So, I mean, from a formal standpoint, I'm really kind of venturing into something I don't really know too much about. So I'm just going to kind of take this off the cuff. So in the United States, I can wire, I think it's about $200,000 a day into my Coinbase account. No questions asked, no problem. It's fully liquid, goes right in my account. If I want to take it out, I think I can withdraw about $100,000 per day in ACH. In Canada, I think it's something crazy like $5,000 per month or $5,000 per week as far as getting fiat into a crypto exchange, which, I mean, I've been talking to people, associates of mine that are like, hey, I want to buy Ethereum, I want to buy Bitcoin, but I mean, I want to put 50 grand in, I want to buy something of size. and it's going to take me forever to get this money actually into the ecosystem. There's just capital constraints around your banking laws with what you can actually get on chain as far as fiat goes, getting it into the exchanges.
Yeah, I think there's a rule in Canada, is there not, Shad, that if any transactions above $10,000 have to go through like extra scrutiny from the banks, where they have to go through all the KYC stuff and scrutinize the transaction, right? So it has to get approval. So there is that bottleneck here. I wasn't aware that you don't have that in in Florida or whatnot.
Well, I mean, yeah, we do. I mean, I said Coinbase. Coinbase, I'm full KYC'd. Coinbase, they have my driver's license, my passport. They know where I live. They have my social security number. Yeah. They know exactly. They're connected via Plaid to my Wells Fargo account, so they know damn well who I am. There's no anonymity like being in MetaMask or being on chain on any of the other platforms. Coinbase do know exactly who I am, where the money's coming from, and it's compliant. Et cetera.
What about credit cards, especially in Canada? Can you deposit?
See, I don't think you should be able to buy crypto with a credit card to begin with, whether it's $1 or whether it's $1,000.
Yeah.
So that's a whole different conversation. I don't think individuals should be leveraging lines of consumer credit to be buying crypto. You can't buy stocks with a credit card. You shouldn't be able to buy crypto with a credit card.
Agreed. Okay, let's switch to psychedelics. Great interview we had earlier this week with the founder of Atai Life Sciences, Christian Egermeyer, where he made some really interesting comments, Anthony. One in particular was that based on Atai's current cash position and the amount of trials they have going that are in late stage, he doesn't think he needs Big Pharma. Did you agree with that?
I mean, he said it with conviction. He's one of the founders of Atai, so I mean, I'll take it at face value. From what I've read, it takes about $1 billion to get one of these indications through to full commercialization. So if you're kind of banking on the fact that they've got 7 in development, 300 million in cash, the numbers just don't add up. Yeah. Maybe Atai has a more sophisticated, low-cost approach to get these to market. But, I mean, we'll wait and see. I think we'll wait and see which ones they do get through, which ones go to commercialization, and if they go at it alone and become the next big pharma company, especially in psychedelics, and become that cornerstone, which I think Atai can be. But if history repeats itself, you saw GW Pharma with their Epidiolex drug and in the cannabinoid space, when they got all the way through and it came time for commercialization, the company was sold to a larger pharma company that had the infrastructure and the experience to get that to market. Yeah. I'm probably going to bet that the same thing is going to happen, which GW I think sold for $6.8 billion. Atai right now is sitting at a $300 million market cap. The risk reward is there. So on a multiple standpoint, I welcome them getting acquired by Big Pharma. I'll take that all day. Do they need it? Christian knows the ins and outs of his business better than I
think
do.
Right now, someone could question him to say, do they need Big Pharma? However, if you have Compass's readouts, they own 18% of that. The FDA approves MDMA, and there were a lot more favorable markets. I think he probably can see how this is going to play out versus the average investor. And, that's where I think the conviction took place as to why he doesn't need Big Pharma, because obviously they're cashed up right now. But Ben, what's your take on it all?
Yeah, I think Christian Egermeyer is correct. I think, they probably have enough cash to get through 1, maybe 2 pipeline drugs. I'm not quite sure it's up in the billion territory to do this. But they're not in phase 3 now, so they're going to have to go through, phase 2A on some of their compounds, or even, some of them are preclinical as well. So they're going to have to some of them will have to go through all 3 phases of it to get there. So it's not just they're in phase 3, they have $100 billion to do this, and then boom, it either passes or fails and goes to the FDA. So I think they probably have enough money to go through 1 of their best compounds, maybe 2. But eventually they're going to have to raise more money. They certainly don't have enough to get through, their 5 clinical compounds and 7 compounds total. Yeah. They'll need to go to market to get, all that if they advance.
Last thing I wanted to touch on, I brought it up at the top of the podcast, a story that you did earlier this week as we switched now to cannabis. You did a story involving debt cliffs in the top 9 MSOs in the industry. This received a ton of attention, trended number 1 on Reddit. Glance through this story. If I were to glance through this story, what's the one company that appears to be in a tough position that could face these debt cliffs, and also one company that is in good position? So what are the two that stand out to you?
Yeah, no, that's a great question.
Put you on the spot, buddy.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. Going through the research, I think it became apparent which companies are really facing the debt cliff, a potential debt cliff in the future, and which aren't. The one that comes to mind is probably Air Wellness, because they have a bunch of notes and agreements of promissory notes that they have to work through in 2024 upcoming. Including, for example, a private placement for $133 million due, promissory note due on December 2024. So it's worth noting, though, that, as we saw with Columbia Care, it's possible for them to extend the note, right? So this is not a hard date. Whenever you see these notes, like they have another $30 million note for the GSD agreement due September 15th. So it is possible to extend those and to keep paying the interest of what they were paying before and extend the maturity by a year. So it's not set in stone that all this debt cliff will happen at that time. But in terms of which company is probably in the best position, I would have to say Green Thumb Industries, because they don't have a lot of debt upcoming besides a $217 million debt maturity coming due in April 30th, 2025. And they're one of the strongest companies in terms of a cash position, and their cash flow generating in general. One of the only companies in the industry doing this, along with MariMed. So I would say Green Thumb is on is least worry about when it comes to debt cliff. Maybe Air Wellness, you have some concerns there. Yeah,
can't help but agree with that one, right, Anthony?
Yeah, I mean, I'm in complete agreement with Ben. I mean, I think GTI, to me, it's top 3 for me in the space. I mean, I think they'll figure out the debt. I mean, the debt's got another 2 years under it. They are cash flow positive. They're in all the good markets. I mean, GTI to me is probably, actually, I'd say it's top 3. It might be number 1 for me in terms of investability. So yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Before I let you guys go,
based on what I see, I'd say GTI is probably the one. If I'm going to dive in, and I've been holding off for now, and personally, in terms of investing in the cannabis space for long-term positions, because I've been looking at the technicals, which I follow, and they haven't been favorable. But if I'm going to dive in, and I'm looking very closely to do that for long-term positions, when the timing's right, I think GTI is right up there on the list because of their balance sheet position, and their debt owing is very sustainable. GTI would be probably right up there 1-2 with what I'd be looking at to get into.
Debt owing, important for investors to understand that when looking at some of these companies, that's for sure. But as we had last week, not a lot of new money entering this space. Before I let you guys go, I do want to ask what your thoughts were about the NBA, where they reportedly are removing cannabis from its list of banned substances and will no longer drug test players as part of a new 7-year collective bargaining agreement. Did you see this announcement, Anthony? And I guess my first question is, do NBA players like cannabis?
So, yes. And I mean, NBA players to me, from an athletic standpoint, are on a completely different level than most athletes.
I know.
But you've had a lot of NBA players come out and said, I literally played high. Like, they'll smoke before a game and go out there and drop 30, 35 points. I don't think cannabis should be on the banned substances list in athletic leagues, especially when you look at toxicology and you look at other things with the pain medication and the anti-inflammatories and everything else that they're pushing to these athletes. They prefer cannabis. They've said that they prefer cannabis. They're not walking into the stadium with a joint in their mouth. I mean, they're using it responsibly. I think that this is a long time coming. I mean, I'm glad to see it happen. I think the NFL will probably follow suit next. MLB.
They have to, especially the NFL.
NFL for sure will. Because NFL, I mean, cannabis does have therapeutic aspects in terms of pain, in terms of relieving, I guess, just body stress. And I mean, NFL players do smoke weed. I mean, I don't think I've seen many of them in retirement that don't, for some sort of either mental clarity or pain management, et cetera. So I mean, yeah, this is awesome. I'm hoping it just landslides over everything else.
Don't look now, but 4 weeks from this upcoming Thursday is the NFL draft. Man, are these mock drafts. They're just dialing them up and shaking around, and it seems like the list is different every single week. One in particular, Jalen Carter, that was, looked at, he was going to go number 1 to the Bears, but obviously the Bears making that trade with Carolina. This guy could fall out of the top 10 based on some of the off-the-field issues. I don't see him falling out of the top 10. But
it sucks. It sucks for him, but it's going to make some teams draft. Whoever gets him. Don't you remember Laramie Tunsil? He had that video that came out of the O-lineman that now plays for the Texans.
Okay.
He was drafted by the Dolphins.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
He had the video 2 nights before the draft that came out of him smoking. This is actually relevant. He had the video of him smoking weed in a fucking gas mask with a bong connected to it. And everyone's like, "Oh, Laramie Tunsil's got character issues." Laramie Tunsil was a Christmas present for the Dolphins that he fell that far.
I know.
Jalen Carter is probably the best player
In the draft.
physically in the draft.
Yeah.
So if he's gonna drop
Ben's not
because
agreeing.
of, and granted, the issues that he has are not small. He's made a couple of big mistakes.
Big.
I
Listen,
I agree with you that he's talented for sure. I wasn't disagreeing with that. But if you're asking me who's the most talented player in this draft, Anthony Richardson, 100%.
You're out of your mind.
Now, you could say that quarterbacking is raw, and I agree with that. But talent-wise, no one has ever seen a quarterback at this position. You're talking like he's Micah
Newton.
Parsons playing quarterback.
He's
a
not
faster
saying
Micah
that.
Parsons.
He's a Seminole. You're talking about a Gator and a Seminole. He ain't agreeing with you.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I'll give anybody. I don't care your team, your school. I'll give you as much props as possible when it's due. But Anthony Richardson cannot read a defense.
Maybe he's wrong.
I don't care.
But
I don't care how athletically talented you are. If you're an NFL quarterback and you cannot read a defense, you are fucked.
Yeah.
But there's
How about Will
videos
Levis?
of him looking off, like scouts looking, and you can see he's looking off safeties. I don't think he's as raw as you think. He makes some mistakes. He's got some accuracy issues because of his feet. But this guy, he's got a short, compact motion. I think this guy's going to be an absolute star in the NFL. And if I were the Panthers, I would draft him number 1 overall.
You just named arguably the 2 most important aspects of a quarterback.
Correct.
Is accuracy and their feet.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well,
You can be you can be a small, an undersized, less athletically gifted quarterback in the NFL, but if you have elite feet and you have elite accuracy, you're an elite quarterback.
Yeah.
I don't think it goes the other way. That if you're this athletic freak, but if you're not accurate and you don't have elite feet, it usually doesn't pan out.
But the accuracy issues come from, I think, like if you look at his motion, like what I'm saying is he's not Colin Kaepernick in 2013, where it's just like this combine superstar, but yet you could tell his motion was long. He had a hitch. Anthony Richardson, if you look at the way he throws the ball, it's as fluid and as smooth as C.J. Stroud. Now he's not as accurate because his feet. He gets probably can't read his feet, but his motion requires no correction. I'm telling you,
Okay, so CJ Stroud that you just said, every Ohio State quarterback that's probably come out in the last 12 years looked like Anthony Richardson. How long did they last after they got drafted? I'm talking Cardell Jones, Terrell Pryor, who the hell are the other ones?
Fields?
There's 4 or 5 of them. I think Justin Fields is elite. Justin Fields is an elite quarterback.
So if you think Justin Fields is an elite quarterback, Anthony Richardson is him on steroids.
No, but Justin Fields has an accurate arm. He's just got no weapons. Wait till you see what the Bears do with these weapons that they're putting around.
He
And
hasn't
Justin
been
Fields
accurate
might
in
be
the
the MVP
He hasn't
next
been
year.
accurate the first 2 years though. He's
Gents,
thrown a lot
Look
of
at his
ducks
stats
and-
last year.
Gents,
What's that?
I'd love to be here all day, but we got calls. We got clients.
Anthony Richardson had a game last year. I think he had 22 incompletions in a row.
Yeah, but look at
Okay,
first of all Josh Allen.
Guys,
Sorry, go ahead.
we got client calls right now. We got to cut this short, okay?
To be
I just think-
continued, Anthony. To be continued.
Yeah, I will take any bet.
Leave a comment
Any
below.
bet.
Who's going number
Yeah.
one? Do you like the cannabis laws? There are the rules now about how they're banning the NBA. Give us your comments. Give us your feedback. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Gents, appreciate the feedback. Let's check in later this week. Have a good rest of your week.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching. And if you want to learn more about the emerging industries that we cover, then leave a comment below and let us know who you want us to interview, the questions you want asked, and the information that you want to learn. We want to hear from you. As usual, click on that bell for all notifications to get the latest information. Share this video with your network, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel because we would not be here without you. Thanks for watching, everyone.